I'm Kelly Shutneck. I have kellyshootneck.com, which is my book review blog. But tell me a little bit about yourself, David, and
Yeah.
just the background of your book.
Yeah, so the book this is my second book. The first book was Authority Content. Second book is Systemology, Create Time, Reduce Errors, and Scale Your Profits with Proven Business Systems. And it's uh, a bit of a labor of love. I think all books for me, I follow a very similar approach. Oftentimes I identify a problem that a particular target audience has that I feel quite passionate about. And then I go through the process of solving it. Usually I'll solve the problem for myself first. Then I kind of work with a small group of people, oftentimes one-on-one, to see if what I'd learned can be transferred. And then the final step, I'll kind of culminate all of those ideas together into a workshop. I run a one-day workshop, and I think of the workshop up front like it's a book. So I think about the sessions as different chapters, and then I'll present it as a way, like a positive constraint to really force me to get it done, because people will be showing up and I have to present and be ready. And then we take the transcription, we video record it, and then I send it off to get it transcribed. That goes to a ghostwriter. Ghostwriter has first go, then I have second go, and then we kind of get into with the editor and things like that. But yeah, we're now came out in August late last year. It's got some really good early feedback and praise and recognition. And yeah, now it's just a matter of kind of trying to spread the word far and wide.
Yeah. So the workshops that you do, so let's stop there for a second. You're in Australia, right?
Yes.
So the workshops that you do, are they online, available to anyone, anywhere?
So it pre-COVID was yeah, like a physical location. People would show up. We were like in a little meeting room, and I'd have between sort of 30 or 50 people that I'd get into that space, and it'd be a one-day workshop. It'd almost be like just a complete brain dump. I call it a workshop. Oftentimes when I think workshop, it's a bit two-way, but really it's more one way. I'm up there just getting the material out. So I often have people kind of say, it's a little bit information overload the way that I do it, but I do it for multiple reasons. And then we oftentimes take the recording and turn that into like a little online program that ends up being like the upsell or the back end to the book. So people read the book and then they want to go through the workshop. And then, yeah, so that way it does kind of go global. But initially, the initial recording is just somewhere local. I've not written a book post COVID, so I don't know if that would
Right.
shift then to a Zoom setting. I'm not sure, but there's something that really it's I find it very difficult to replicate in a Zoom setting compared to real world people in there. It's a different sort of energy I get from being in that space.
Sure. Yeah, you may have to approach it differently if you do it that way. I will say I love that you didn't push to do a video, but you just, it was just I don't know, assumption, I think, that we would meet on video. And most authors tend to be more behind the scenes and don't want to do video interviews. So I was very excited that you were the one who introduced the idea, and you seem to be very comfortable with that. You look like you have a podcast, Mike. Do you have a podcast also that you do?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So I do. It's Business Processes Simplified. And it's a little
Okay.
bit different from a lot of the other podcasts. What it aims to do, it's not like, hey, tell me about your background and your history and let's dig into that. It's very much tell us about a problem inside business that you've been able to solve, and tell us the system for that. So I literally go step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and then we take the recordings from those podcasts and then they get turned into accompanying systems that then end up sort of accompanying the podcast. But that's why the setup and the fancy lights in the background. And
Yeah.
I know what you mean with a lot of the authors I have met, though. But I think maybe because I used to have, as you know, the digital agency, so I'm very familiar with the marketing side of things and being comfortable with content creation, whether it's podcast or YouTube videos or articles. I think it's something that authors really need to master, because most authors, they get so focused on writing the book and they create a tremendous book, but then they think the work is done once it's written. But really, you're probably only a third of the way there. I think marketing
Right.
just for the launch and then even consistently beyond there. Like, I think you need to get out there and raise awareness for it, because the world is a noisy place. And if you don't do it, no one will.
Yeah. Well, and so you actually reached out to me about doing a giveaway for your book, and so this is the book that I have. You mentioned two books, but I've got SYSTEMology, and that I'll be reading, reviewing on my blog, and also doing a giveaway for it. I often get requests from authors to review books, and I don't take up every author who asks me to do them, but yours really stood out to me. And as I was mentioning to you earlier, what stood out right away was when I got a copy of it was at the top, it mentions that you have a foreword by Michael Gerber, who wrote the E-Myth, and then it has the E-Myth series. And I don't want to give away what's in your book, but do you mind telling any part of your
Yeah.
story with Michael
Oh,
Gerber?
definitely. So it was almost like the stars aligned for that opportunity for me to work with Michael. I
Yeah.
was in the digital agency, and um, we'd kind of got to this point where I'd been working in it day to day for about 10 years. And then my wife and I found out we were pregnant. And then I just thought to myself, oh, I don't want to be that dad who's always too busy, because I was working incredibly long hours in the digital agency, mornings, nights, weekends. And I thought, oh, I've got to change something. And I kind of intuitively knew that systems and processes would provide a really important part. But for some reason, I had a lot of baggage. I kind of thought, oh, the digital agency is different. Google's always updating their algorithm. Things are changing and moving so
Yeah.
quickly. What's the point of doing a system or a process if it's just going to be out of date? But I thought, I've seen others build agencies that have scaled beyond them, so it must be possible. And finding out we were pregnant was enough to really push me. So I spent about the next 9 to sort of 12 months heavily systemizing, and got it to a point where I hired a CEO, and she started running that business. And then I had a SaaS program, which was like a side hobby for me, called systemHUB. It's to store businesses' systems and processes in the cloud. And it was always the side project. And I thought, oh, I really want to make this my thing, because I kind of had started to lose the passion with the agency side of things. And then I get an email out of the blue from a lady called Luzdelia Gerber. Didn't know her first name, knew the surname, and the website was Michael E. Gerber Companies. And I went and had a look at that, and it was clear that it was Michael Gerber. And for people who are in business or have been in business for a while, his book is more well known oftentimes than his name. So the book, The E-Myth, which many cite as pretty much him being the godfather of business systems for small business. And all her email said was, call me. So I knew where they were based. They were on the
I can't believe you did it.
yeah.
I can't imagine getting that email and calling that person, but you did
Yeah.
it.
It literally, I needed to get out and get a screenshot of it, because all it said was, call me. And then it was a phone number and then her signature, and that was it. So I could tell that I knew that they were on the West Coast in the States. So it was my early morning, her afternoon, and called her. And the long story short, she said, look, Michael's just turned 80, and he's written the final book in his E-Myth series called Beyond the E-Myth. And for the first time, we've decided not to go through HarperCollins. We're going to self-publish so we can fully maintain the rights. And we need to do some sort of launch. And she said, I happen to see you launch your first book, Authority Content. And she said, I really liked your book launch. And would you be interested in doing it for me and Michael? And I said, look, I don't do book launches. This is not my thing, but I'll make an exception for Michael. I even went one step further, and then I volunteered for the position. I said I'd be happy to do it just for the chance to work with Michael. And then I worked really heavily and closely with him for pretty much 3 months solid. The agency was running really, really well, and it meant I could fully lean into this project. It was a bit of an opportunity of a lifetime. They didn't know what I was doing with SystemHUB or any of the SYSTEMology stuff. They contacted me through the agency, but I knew there was perfect alignment there. So I just thought, well, let's just follow this and see what happened. The book launch was really good success. It was Michael's first book to become an Amazon bestseller within 24 hours. So we got everybody excited and built up to the moment, and the book launched really well, and he got a huge number of book reviews. And then he invited me over to the US. He runs an event called the Dreaming Room, and I flew over to the States to attend that. And I had a couple of colleagues that I had got to help me with the book launch, so they came over and we rented this Mac Daddy Airbnb house hanging off the rocks in La Jolla, and attending Michael's workshop in this swanky hotel. And the event itself was really, really great. And then at the end of that event, he had a 2-day mastermind because he's 80. He's thinking about the legacy, like what happens next with his body of work. And Luz Delia said, "Oh, do you want to stay on?" And she said also, we were hoping to get Tony Robbins to come and do like the emceeing for this little mastermind in Michael's suite. And it was the who's who in business. But she said at the 11th hour, we lost the MC. So I stuck my hand up and I said, "Oh, would you like me to MC the room?" And she said, "Yeah, okay." So here I am 3 months earlier, having not even spoken to Michael, and I'm standing in front of the audience of 20 people, probably 20 25 people in his presidential suite at this hotel up the room, trying to mastermind and think, okay, well, what is Michael going to do with his work as he kind of starts to step back? And I just remember pinching myself going, what on earth has happened? How did I end up here? And I feel it's given me a new appreciation for what the business systems do, which is it's all about creating space and the opportunity. Like if I was so heavily working in my business, there's no way that I would have been able to follow that opportunity. When Luz Delia messaged me and said, "Hey, can you work on this full time for the next 3 months?" And I said, "At no pay," and then drop everything and fly over to the States. Like that was only made possible by building a business that could work without me. So that's really kind of even got me even more pumped up about what we do with SYSTEMology, because I feel that's the missing piece for a lot of business owners who are trying to and it doesn't have to be the opportunity of a lifetime. It's just oftentimes opportunities pop up for business owners. Some of them they might see, but some of them they might not see because they're so busy in the thick of it.
Right.
So that's my little Michael story, and we keep in touch. He's a huge supporter of what we do in SYSTEMology. I had a few people who've read the book and had commented the forward almost feels like it's like he's passing the baton on, like the way it's kind of written about digging into each other's work. So I feel I've got to really sort of step up to this moment, because I feel there's not really a great advocate for business systems, but specifically for small business. Like there's Six Sigma and some of these bigger methodologies, but they're all built for automotive companies and companies with 100+ staff, and it just doesn't work on the micro level. And most business owners, they don't even like systems and processes, and they think, they try it and it doesn't work, so they abandoned it and never follow it through. When I think what they need to do is they have to fall in love with what the business systems can bring, not fall in love with the idea of writing systems and processes. Like I don't like writing detailed systems and processes. But I love what getting a good systemized business can deliver to the business owner and the rest of the team.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And in my work, I mentioned to you that I'm actually a director of marketing. And so I totally understand, not as a business owner, but just even in my department alone, just having processes in place, the systems in place. And we work really hard at my company putting those things in place so that there's just consistency for and it basically, like we call it the blue, I think it's called the blue book, that Michael Gerber talks about in his book, having that manual that people can pull out and go through everything. So it's a consistent delivery for the client. And that if you have turnover in your staff or whatever, that those things get passed on and not lost. And as an owner, you don't end up having to jump back in to fill those holes or figure things out. But you have the right people in place, the right processes in place, the right tools. So yeah, I love that.
It's also quite rare for someone in a creative industry to have that as well, because for some reason the creative people are the ones that oftentimes really go, no, we don't want to remove the creativity by systemizing it out. So it's a little bit counterintuitive, because once you get systems and processes right, what ends up happening is it ends up creating space, because in the back of your head you don't have to think, oh, did we set up that project right? Did the client fill out the questionnaire correctly? Oh, did we invoice them? Like all of that sort of stuff. If you just get all of that down, it actually allows you to do more creative work. So really good to hear you guys from a creative industry. And I know you had mentioned, I think some of the other people on the team have sort of really bought into the E-Myth way of doing things, which I think ends up being a huge competitive advantage.
Yeah. Well, and that's, so we love that book. What I caught from what I've read of your book so far is that you get really into the how to, not just the reason why, but here's how to do it. And I think that I loved the E-Myth, but I'm super excited to read your book and read through how you explain the 4 steps to actually mastering that, right? So I know, again, I don't want to give away your book, but tell me about, do you have a success story from anyone that you've worked with where?
Yeah, quite a lot. Like the way that I always develop these methodologies, there's a moment in time when I do the one-on-one work. So when I was first testing out SYSTEMology, I worked with probably a good 30 or 40 companies where I was doing this SYSTEMology process, and that's what really helped me to craft and perfect it. So stories, one that always sticks out, because I just recently interviewed her, Jeanette from Diggity Doggy Daycare. She was working in that company for about 8 years before she really got heavy into systemizing. She decided she wanted to sell that business. Over the course of 12 months, she systemized it. Then she attracted the attention of a big corporate here in Australia that wanted to take her concept and use her store as the franchise prototype. And they gave her a very high multiple when she sold out. And they cited 2 things. They said one was the financial performance, and the second were the systems. They said we can see now how this could be rolled out. So there's quite a few stories like that on exiting. But then, I love the other stories. Like there's a guy, Gary, he owns a company called Eco Solutions. They do like bushfire management here in Australia. And he hadn't taken a holiday for 5 years. He's had a small team, but everything was bottlenecking through him. And he went through the SYSTEMology approach, started to capture his best practice, brought on a couple of extra team members, like administrative team members, and then sent me a message. I think it was probably after about 18 months. And he said, I was able to double my net profit, improved his, what was it? Doubled his sales, and then improved his net profit from like 80 to 30, from 8% to 30%. And the best one, he said, was I took my first holiday in 5 years, where he went away with his family. And then there's, like we've worked with so many different industries, everything from immigration companies to digital agencies seems to be a big one, I think, because of my history. I think, it's accounting firms are another big one. I find people with finance backgrounds tend to sort of resonate with the systems approach. We've got quite a few accountants that have started now teaching their clients SYSTEMology. I had someone just over Christmas, they bought a bunch of the SYSTEMology books and sent it out to their clients. So I'm just starting to hear some more of the stories come in now that are at arm's reach from me. Most of the stories that I've had to date are the ones that I worked with one-on-one, but now I'm starting to get the stories from, oh, I read the book and then I applied the ideas. So that's
Yeah.
always exciting.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. I mean, that it's really great to know that your work is impacting so many other businesses and other people and owners, who they just, get so stuck in the day to day that it's really hard to step out of that and to see how working on the business instead of in the business really benefits them in the long run. It's so hard to do when you're in the middle of it. But I just want to talk to you a little bit about the writing process, the publishing
Mm-hmm.
process, kind of what you've gone through, and you've had the 2 books. Have did you self-publish both of those books?
Self-published both, but I've got a lady who she's almost like a hybrid type person. Like she's
Okay.
works or has worked in a big publishing company. She sort of does some freelance things on the side, and she helps with lining up the editor and doing all the submissions through to Amazon and organizing the studio for doing the audio book, and like she just kind of made sure that everything went really, really smoothly.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the audiobook, so I'll come back to that in a second. But so with all of your, systemology, creating the systems, hiring the right people, doing all those things, what's the writing process like for you? How do you sit down and do the writing and find the time for that?
It's definitely slow and painful. I don't um uh I wouldn't say I enjoy the process, but I kind of feel like it has to be done, and I enjoy the feeling of once it's done. So
Yeah,
I think if I was just looking at a blank Google Doc and I had to write 50 or 60,000 words, I would find that really challenging. So I kind of find my little hack, that idea I mentioned of the workshop, like working with version 1 after the ghostwriter's done it, I find infinitely easier. I can then, hop in there. I do end up pretty much rewriting it. Uh, like I'll take chunks of what they're doing, but by and large, like I'm going through sentence by sentence and really just making it right. And then coming from the marketing background as well, and writing a little bit of copy, um, it makes me very particular when I'm writing my copy as well, and I can't not do that,
right.
unfortunately. So that's also why it takes some time. I mean, probably coming up from when first getting the idea, all up, including working with some clients, running a little workshop, and all the whole book part. It's probably like a 3 or 4 year exercise. That once the book is transcribed, though, and we've got the first edit, that's probably about a year process, I would imagine, kind of a little bit of backwards and forwards. um yeah, it feels good once it's done. That's for sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so you mentioned audiobooks. So you have audiobook versions of both of your books?
I just did the second book. I feel like I would have liked to have done the audio book for the first book on release. Like in hindsight, I feel like it needs to all be done together. Like just as I'd written it, I went off the back of this one and I did the audio book. And because my mind was so in it, my world at that time was systemology. So then reading the book, it comes through, and I mean, I always enjoy audio books infinitely more if it's read by the author. So I wanted to be an author who read his own book. So that's uh, and I felt like I missed that window with the first book. I kind of had moved on and haven't been able to go back and motivate myself enough to record the audio for that one.
Yeah, yeah. So you actually came to me originally as a friend, colleague. I'm not sure your relationship, but of Alan Dibb. Is it Dibb or Dibbs with an S?
Dib,
Dibb. Okay,
Alan Dib, yeah.
I said it right. So what other authors have you connected? So Michael Gerber, Alan Dibb. What other authors are you connected with? And how did they help you become a better writer?
Yeah, Alan Dibb's great. Definitely want to give him a shout out. Not only has he
Yeah.
written an excellent book, he's really helpful. He actually lives 2 streets away from me, so it's like this is like the little pocket of Melbourne, Australia-based authors. We come and live, and we live in Mount Martha.
Nice.
But yeah, a few other authors. I've got another good friend, Pete Williams. He's written a book called Cadence, and Mike Rhodes. He's got The Definitive Guide to AdWords. There's quite a few authors just sort of in my space, and you kind of just pick up from them what's working and what's not. So I think the reason I kind of gelled really well with Alan's work is, and it's clear that the one-page marketing plan is a system. And as I said, it's not common to see a systems thinker in a creative space. So he's systemizing what is oftentimes seen as quite creative, and then that's also why it's quite unique. So and he's all about, how do we turn this into a system and a process? How do we make it consistently happening? Dave, if you want to market your book, you got to get on podcasts and you got to get book reviews, get the system in place for that, and just keep doing it, wax on, wax off.
Yeah.
So that's how we ended up connecting as well. It's just part of our approach now for building the book is getting influencers and people in the space to read the book and then comment on it.
Yeah, so Alan, I think, was the very first author who reached out to me a few years ago. He said, hey, can I send you 2 copies of my book? And here's why I'm going to send you 2 copies. I want you to read it and review it and keep a copy. And then I want you to do a giveaway. And I was like, oh, I love that. So I did that. I read his book. It was great. And I did a review for his, but then I did a giveaway. And I honestly had not done that again until I heard from you with the same. You were like, I know that you read Alan's book. Would you be willing to read mine? And I just think that's a really great marketing tactic, because book reviewers know other readers and other book reviewers. And so it's a great way to spread the word. And so, yeah, it's fun that that we connected through Alan, and I did really love his book. But just tell us, what's in Australia, what is your favorite place to visit? If I were to go there on a vacation, where would you tell me to go?
I'm a little bit biased, but come and visit Mount Martha. We've got nice beaches down here. I do. Yeah, we've got, I live down on the peninsula. I feel very lucky with where we are. We've got, a lot of good things going down here in Melbourne, on the peninsula in particular.
Nice. Well, I'm jealous because it's right now where I am, it's snowing. So it's, I mean, it's pretty, but it's a different kind of pretty. I'm ready for summer.
Well,
I'm ready to be at the beach.
That's right. It happens every year, so it'll come back.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, David, for reaching out, and for being willing to be in this interview with me. I really appreciate it. And I know authors will learn a lot from your experience and the stories that you share, as well as business owners who will learn a lot from your message. So I really appreciate you taking the time out. What time of day is it where you are, by the way?
9:30, so a.m. Just getting started for the day.
That's not bad. Okay, well, I'm just finishing up for the day, so that's better than I thought. So, yeah, thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity.